it's kind of remarkable. We can screw up our bodies and it can take decades to screw them up, but literally in days or weeks, people can snap right out of it. I mean, I'm sure you noticed maybe after the first cycle or so, you were good. It doesn't take that long. So it's not like I'm saying, do this for 5 years and your periods might get better. I'm like, do it for 5 days and you'll see how you feel.
This is Awakened Love, the podcast, and I'm your host, Angel. This is a space where we get real about sex, love, and awakening. So strap in, let's go deep. What's up, beautiful awakened humans? Welcome to another episode of Awakened Love. Today we have Dr. Mark Hyman. Dr. Hyman is a physician who now is the founder and head medical director of the UltraWellness Center, which specializes in functional medicine. He's a New York Times bestselling author. He has 18, I believe he's working on his 19th book. He's a real rock star of the medicine world. He's a dear friend and my doctor, and I'm so elated to have him here today. Welcome to the show, beautiful human being. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks for having me.
Well, I've been
so good to see you.
Yeah. I've been really excited to have you on because when I shared just a little bit on my socials about the transformation that I'd experienced through your work, healing my pretty much lifelong, since I've been menstruating, painful periods, and you helped me heal that to such a great extent. And I had so many responses asking, how did you do it? What happened? Tell me the process. And so I've been really excited to get you on here and kind of dive into a little bit about hormones, fertility, maybe even libido, all of these like women's health topics as they relate to functional medicine. So could you kick us off a little bit and just speak to the current state of hormones on this planet today? What's it like? How do you think we got here with so much infertility, PCOS, painful periods?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I thought a lot about this. And, I believe that, whether you believe in God or nature or creation, whatever, we weren't designed to be flawed. We were designed to run well. And so why all of a sudden do 75% of women suffer from premenstrual syndrome? Just to mention that. Why are 1 in 7 couples infertile? Why are women suffering from so many hormonal dysregulatory symptoms like fibroids and PCOS and bad menopausal symptoms and breast cancer and cervical problem? I mean, it's an epidemic of hormonal chaos that results from not some random design flaw in humanity or in women. It results from a cascade of events that have accumulated over the last 150 years that have driven us into this hormonal dysregulation. At high level, our food is the number one thing. Our food has been so manipulated and changed, so we're not eating nutrient-dense food anymore. We're eating ultra-processed food. And most people don't understand this, but food is not just calories. Yes, if you eat too many calories and you don't exercise, you'll gain weight. But food is information. It's instructions. It's code. And it can upgrade or downgrade your biological software with every bite. And it directly regulates your hormones, like directly, like minute to minute, second to second, every bite. You are changing your hormones. Just like, for example, insulin is a hormone that changes. Estrogen changes when you eat certain foods. If you're eating a lot of carbohydrates and sugar, you actually produce way more estrogen, and you become estrogen toxic. So you ever see guys who like are overweight and they have these man boobs and these big bellies? They get really soft skin. They lose the hair on their bodies.
Yes.
They become more like women.
Yes.
Why is that? Because the fat tissue that they are accumulating because of all the sugar and starch and the beer bellies leads to increased aromatization of testosterone into estrogen. So if you actually get high levels of estrogen, and these men become highly estrogenic, and they can often have as high levels of estrogen as women.
Are there things that you can eat that make your testosterone do that?
Well, yes, it's the opposite is true. When you eat too much sugar, your testosterone goes down.
Right.
So it's sort of like it's not quite the same in men and women. And then we're lacking fiber, which is really important. For example, estrogen metabolism and hormone metabolism is regulated through the gut. And so our gut microbiome is a mess because of processed food, lack of fiber, and antibiotics, toxins, and so forth. I mean, women who take antibiotics get more breast cancer. Why? Because they destroy their microbiome. So when you look at the for example, we call it the enterohepatic circulation of estrogen. Basically, estrogen is packaged up in a little like package to get excreted and then shuttled out of your body when you need to get rid of it, and that causes all kinds of good things, so you don't build up too much estrogen. But if you have certain bad bugs in your gut, it literally will, through an enzymatic reaction, uncouple the estrogen from its package or unwrap the estrogen, and it gets reabsorbed. So you get high levels of estrogen, which is why we get fibroids. So flax seeds, for example, are great in helping to balance estrogen. Soy foods are helpful. Cruciferous vegetables, the broccoli family, all improve pathways. And then we have so many things like toxins that are rampant that we never were exposed to. So there's a whole science of what we call xenotoxins or xenoestrogens or xenohormones. Xeno just means foreign. And so we see these disrupting fertility. We see them causing cancer. We see them causing hormonal dysregulation.
What are they in?
And so you've got
these toxins.
They're in everything. Angel, they're in everything. They're in our water, their air, and our food, pesticides, plastics. Just drink
How'd they
plastic
get there?
bottled water. We put them there.
Oh my Lord.
I mean, we polluted the planet. We use pesticides. We use herbicides. We use plastics, which are all anything that's a petrochemical derived product, which is ubiquitous in our society, whether it's a plastic bottle or anything you're doing. These are estrogen mimics, and so they'll bind to the estrogen receptor, but they're so much more powerful than estrogen itself. And not only are they additive, but they're synergistic. So 1 + 1 doesn't equal 2; it might equal 100. And so you're getting exposed to all these different things: dioxins, PCBs, phthalates, parabens, plastic derivatives.
Is that why they do BPA free? Is that like the alternative?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that's important.
So there's BPA free bottles, but better not plastic.
Yeah, just
Stay
no
away
plastic.
from eating or drinking out of, like, people microwaving plastic. People are exposed to it. And so you really want to be careful of your body care products, your skincare products, your household products, your food that you're eating. You want to eliminate pesticides. So you've got the food, you've got toxins, you've got all these things that disrupt our microbiome. Then you've got all this chronic stress that people are under, and then nutrient depletions and lack of supportive foods and protective foods that people need for hormone regulation. And so we're in this sort of soup of hormonal chaos that explains so much of what's happening. And once you understand it, you can start to change people's systems so you can actually help to regulate these pathways better.
Yes. So one of the things that came up in my results, and I imagine it's common, but I'll ask you if that's true, is like high level of yeast, candida in my gut. And you made the connection just then. You said if you eat a lot of carbohydrates and sugar, that disrupts your estrogen and it also disrupts your gut. But if you eat a lot of carbohydrates and sugar and take antibiotics, which you also mentioned, that can also create the candida overgrowth, right? Is there a connection there?
Absolutely. I mean, basically, yeast loves sugar. So, I mean, think about wine, or think about maybe one day you bought a jug of apple cider and you put it in your fridge and you forgot about it, and then it just kind of blows up. Why? Because the yeast in there is fermenting the sugar and causing, and so your stomach, if you do that, you'll bloat, you'll get distended, and the yeast will overgrow, and you're feeding the wrong things, and then the yeast produces all these metabolites and byproducts that cause inflammation. And that disrupts hormones as well.
Yeast can be tricky to get rid of, right? Like I've spoken to a few girlfriends about it as well. It's like there's the school of thought of, doing the candida cleanse and just not eating any sugar for a really long time. There's also, what's your school of thought on healing that?
I mean, I think, there's this whole sort of cultural kind of belief that everybody's got candida and it's not true. I mean, we all have yeast in our gut, and sometimes they can get out of balance and grow. And some people are really, really affected. I mean, I've had patients who are really, really affected. For example, one comes to mind. I call her a walking mushroom because she had vaginal yeast infections. She had, fungal yeast over her skin under her breast. She had like patchy white flaky thing. She had dandruff. She had blepharitis, which is eyes with yeast on them. So she was like a walking mushroom, and it wasn't hard to diagnose.
Yeah.
But many people, it's much more subtle. So there are varying degrees. And I think people go on extreme diets to deal with it doesn't really make sense. Yes, nobody should be eating a ton of sugar. Nobody should be eating a ton of flour and processed food. That's really for everybody. And if you really are struggling with a lot of yeast overgrowth, yeah, you want to cut down on fruit, cut down on sugar, cut down on grains and beans, eat more of kind of a paleo style, which can really help. And then you want to build up the good bugs by eating prebiotics, probiotics, polyphenols, all of which help grow healthy bugs in the gut. And also you can take an antifungal probiotics. One of my favorite is called Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a yeast actually itself, but we call it yeast against yeast. So it outcompetes the yeast. It helps keep your flora healthy and helps your microbiome and helps the biofilm layer. And helps get rid of that. And there's a particular product I use called Biohm, BIOHM.
I take it every day.
Which I don't have any affiliation with them or anything. It's just a very well-designed product with the Saccharomyces that also has proteolytic enzymes that disrupt the biofilm because the yeast can get in there. And then other probiotics are great. And then sometimes you use antifungals, and there's antifungal herbs that we can use. Oregano is great. And there's many herbs we use, as well as sometimes I use medication, like an antifungal medication, like nystatin or diflucan, depending on how bad it is. Sometimes I don't know if you ever saw that Indiana Jones movie where he's battling all these people and somewhere in the Middle East, and he's sword fighting everybody, and he's like just kind of knocking everybody down. And this one giant guy comes, and he's got this big sword, and he like looks at him, he just pulls out his gun and he shoots him. So it's like sometimes you just need to use a big gun.
Yes.
But most of us, through modifying our diet, through taking pre and probiotics, through actually taking some natural antifungals, often we can get it under control.
So you mentioned some of the symptoms there. Let's move into the PMS stuff around food as well. So we're talking about like how to control these types of things, or improve through food. A few of the things that you had me try for my period pains, which I've had since I got periods, they've been excruciating. So it was it was like a magic trick to me, because I was just thinking, there's no way that we're going to actually be able to impact this so greatly. And so there was two things that you had me try immediately when I told you that I experienced really bad period pains every month since I've been menstruating. You said, try cutting out gluten, try cutting out dairy. And that seemed to help me pretty dramatically. Why is that?
Yeah.
And why isn't that talked about more?
Yeah. So not everybody's sensitive to gluten and dairy. Gluten can create inflammation. Inflammation creates all the havoc that can cause disruption of hormones. Dairy is kind of unique in that it's an incredibly hormonally rich substance. There's 60 different hormones in there.
Wow.
And that's naturally occurring hormones. And if you're taking, BCG milk, which is a bovine growth hormone, you're getting more. If you're milking pregnant cows, which is often what they're doing, you're getting even more hormones. Even organic milk can be milk from pregnant cows. And also they actually insert DES, which is an estrogen, diethylstilbestrol. It's an estrogen pellet into these cows to make them more estrogenic.
Wow.
If you're, so you're getting a lot of hormonal inflammatory compounds that can be in dairy. So dairy is one of the big ones for women, for PMS, for menstrual cramps, for fibroids. It's the first thing to go. That and alcohol. The other thing is alcohol. Alcohol drives up estrogen, so it poisons your liver. I mean, listen, let's face it. Alcohol is a poison. It's a liver poison, right? And any amount of it will have some impact. Now, most of us can handle it and process it, but we know, for example, if you're taking hormone replacement therapy like Premarin, and you drink, the hormones just go through the roof because your body can't excrete it. So what's happening is this great imbalance in estrogen and progesterone in the body in women. And so at different times of their life and different times of their life cycle, they'll end up with different issues, right? So you can get irregular periods when you're younger, you can get PMS, then you start to, maybe get more breast tenderness, fluid retention, estrogenic symptoms. Maybe you skip periods or have longer cycles. You get heavy bleeding, clotting as you get older. Then you get into perimenopause. So there's no, like when you look at a woman's cycle, it's constantly changing over their lifetime. And it's really because of this sort of over the time imbalance in this estrogen and progesterone. And so especially as women get older, they tend to not ovulate as much, they get lower progesterone, then estrogen keeps getting pumped up. So really you want to minimize the toxins, you want to minimize sugar and starch, you want to minimize alcohol, you want to get rid of dairy, you want to get rid of inflammatory foods and gluten, refined oils. And you want to increase all the estrogen benefiting foods. Like you should eat brassica family every day, 2 to 3 cups of like broccoli, collards, kale, flax seeds, soybeans. People say, oh, soy, that's an estrogen. No, it's not. It's an estrogen modulator. It binds to the estrogen receptor, but it doesn't necessarily cause negative expression of estrogen in cancer. It's the opposite. It actually acts like a buffer. So it can protect you, but not GMO soy and not, soy that's sprayed with glyphosate and pesticides and all that stuff.
Yeah,
So
it's tricky.
yeah,
Trying to get more vegetables in, but then also not the vegetables covered in glyphosate and all that stuff. So I guess what are we doing? Looking for organic. Although I have heard, and is this true, that organic is actually getting closer and closer to just regular food now because of all the lobbying and stuff. So it used to be quite a high bar, and that bar is progressively dropping. Is that in alignment with what you know?
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, all the prices are coming down. All the scale is going up. I mean, I just heard that Nestle, for example, is going to turn 80% of their product line into regenerative foods by 2030. Who knows if that's going to happen, but it's pretty amazing.
It like actually regenerative? That's the thing I'm saying. Like what we know as organic now is not the same quality as what organic first was. Like there's less hoops to jump through to actually get the organic certification.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
So
yeah,
what's a gal to do? Is it like farmers markets the best? Where do you get your
vegetables? I mean, look, there's an environmental working group which I'm on the board of, and it's a nonprofit that determines the quality of the toxins in your different things. So you can look at household products, skincare products, and I encourage women to look at their skincare products. So that's another source of toxins and estrogenic compounds.
Mm-hmm.
Sunblock. We think, sunblock, I'm doing it for my beauty. But then on the other hand, you might be poisoning yourself with parabens.
Yes.
So they have a wonderful list called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So the Dirty Dozen is these dozen foods you should never eat if they're not organic, like strawberries, for example. Whereas certain foods like bananas and avocados, if they're not organic, who cares? Like you're going to peel them and it doesn't really have that much in the inside. So it's really important to sort of look and see where can you handle with your budget, what can you get. But you really want to minimize it. You can also, wash them. There's vegetable washes with hydrogen peroxide and various things. Soaps. You can get the pesticides off because they're fat soluble. So there are ways to clean your vegetables too to reduce the exposure. So there's a lot of hacks you can use, and I write about them in my books a lot. But it's really important to just try to minimize your exposures.
I'd love to shift gears a little bit and ask now about fertility, because I know this can be a really painful and difficult problem to have. And I know that there are a lot of really kind of expensive interventions that are available. Is there any natural things that women could do or tips, even if it's not natural medication? Like what would you suggest? Obviously, short of having a proper blood panel with a functional medicine doctor, that's always the ideal, I imagine.
Yeah. So for infertility. Infertility is just rampant, right? And it's both men and women. Sperm counts are going down, and there are real problems with men's fertility as well, which is often overlooked because of the same reasons, environmental toxins. And what's even stunning, Angel, is the ratio of men to women births are changing because of these environmental toxins that are affecting fertility and reproduction. It's kind of scary, actually. There's a really profound book that was written many years ago called Our Stolen Future by Theo Colburn, which talks about the role of various environmental toxins in affecting fertility. So that's really a big area.
Are we having more boys or more girls now? What's the trend based on the hormones?
I think more girls.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, the things that people can do, the first thing is really to sort of clean up their whole life. And in diagnostically, the things that I really look at, and one of the biggest causes of fertility is insulin resistance, which is related to carbohydrates and sugar. And that causes PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome, which is not an ovarian problem. It's a food problem. And so essentially they get really disrupted hormones. They get really dysregulated insulin pathways, and that leads them to have high testosterone and infertility, what we call anovulatory cycles. They don't ovulate. And that's a problem. And so I think you really cleaning up your diet. There's a book written by a Harvard researcher called The Fertility Diet, which is essentially about eating a very low starch sugar, basically what I call the Pegan diet, which is whole foods, unprocessed, lots of veggies, good fats. And by the way, your hormones are made from fat. So if you're eating low fat, women are, yes. Okay. So cholesterol is the building block of hormones. So a lot of women who are vegan or who are actually eating very low fat diets, they'll become infertile. They'll stop ovulating. They'll get amenorrhea because they're when the body is starving, when it doesn't think it's getting enough food because you're a vegan or because you're not eating enough fat, it's like, well, it's not a good time to reproduce because there's not enough food in the environment, so I'm just going to hold off for now. So your body kind of naturally shuts down fertility. It's important also to look at the gut and gut health and gut flora, to look at environmental toxins. I use stool testing. I'll use heavy metal challenge testing, look at heavy metals, which can interfere with fertility. I'll put women in detoxification protocols to help them generally detox
Which
with
I'm
saunas
on
and
right
cold plunges.
now because I had high
Yes,
metals
yeah,
too.
yeah. So it's,
Yeah.
we just got to handle all the pieces. We look at um, also often one reason for miscarriages is a common problem with methylation or B vitamins. So women
Oh.
will often have this gene, which affects about 35% of the population, called MTHFR. And just a quick story: I had a woman that I knew who was a director who did the movie Fed Up, which I was part of, that helped to explain the role of food and obesity in children. And she had miscarriage after miscarriage. She'd had an anencephalic baby, which means a baby with no brain. It was just a horrible tragedy story. And I wrote an article on methylation, which is essentially what happens, the chemical reactions dependent on B vitamins, B6, B12, and folate. And she read the article and she went to her doctor, said, "Can you please check for this gene? I think I might have it." And she did, and she had it. And then he said, "Well, you just need folic acid." She's like, no, Dr. Hyman in an article said I need methylfolate. So she got on the right formulation and ended up actually completely being fine, and ended up with this beautiful baby. And when we were on tour of the movie doing media, she was breastfeeding in the back of the taxi with me with her beautiful baby that she had as a result simply of getting the right vitamins and nutrients. So really important to optimize your health for nutrition, for the right nutrients, for reducing toxins, optimizing your microbiome.
And getting that blood
And
panel, right? It sounds like to know which genes you have, like getting a really full blood
yeah,
panel with a functional medicine doctor. Because is there also certain
absolutely.
vitamins that if they're low, like for example, I had really low vitamin A and really low magnesium. But what was so fascinating to me is watching you go through my set like my blood and all of my samples, and being able to also say, oh, the reason your vitamin A is low is actually you have a certain gene that means you don't process it a certain way. And so it's like these connections that are made in functional medicine that I have never experienced in any other type of medicine, where it's not just the symptoms, but it's also like following that line all the way to the root. So it sounds like, for this woman, she went and she got the correct paneling done so she could see what it was that was unique to her. Is the vitamin that you're talking about, is that in the homeocysteine supreme, the vitamins that I take for B12?
Yes.
Yeah.
So you have this methylation problem. So we use not just any regular vitamins. So often this is a sort of a deeper conversation, but 1/3 of all of our genes code for enzymes, and enzymes are variable depending on your genetics. And so some people have enzymes that require you to take high doses of a certain nutrient to make it work. Other ones need a specific form of a nutrient. Otherwise, for example, this MTHFR gene this woman had makes it hard for her to methylate the folate, which is the active form of folate. Methylate means it's got to add a carbon and 3 hydrogens to the folate to make it work.
Right.
Well, she couldn't do that.
So she's taking the folic acid, yes, and it's not working.
And it wouldn't work. And that's what's in most prenatal vitamins. But no, you need methylfolate to actually, and that's a better one to take for most people because it bypasses that step, which can affect up to 35% of the population. So you need to do the right one. So in those homocysteine supreme, there's methylated folate, B6, B12, and other palmithylglycine and other compounds that are methylation support compounds, and it helps to make this pathway work.
Yeah. I mean, I notice, and what I was hearing you talk a lot about is really just moving into whole foods. Like step 1, eat more vegetables if you can, reduce the toxins. And I mean, I'm sure everyone listening notices when you just eat a whole bunch of vegetables, you feel really good. You're going to be going to the bathroom in a whole different way. Like your mood.
It's true.
Can we talk a little bit about that, the connection between mood and, anxiety, depression, all of these things? Because I've recently was reading about the endocrine system and its connection to the HPA axis, which like how connected essentially our hormones are to, I mean, it is our mood, right? It's like the whole thing that regulates our mood, but also our gut has an impact on how we're able to. So can you speak a little bit to that?
Yes, because the hormones in our gut are so tied in, and often we just don't realize that how much that plays a role in our overall metabolic health, and everything we do affects our hormones. What we think,
Wow.
stress. I mean, why does stress make all the symptoms of menopause worse or PMS worse? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
so all those things are regulated by stress, and your gut also is regulated by stress, and the environment in your gut plays a huge role. So often doctors don't think of looking at poop, but it actually is a huge thing that I look at when I want to see what's going on with someone's hormones because of
Yeah.
how it regulates everything. So everything is tied to everything else. It's basically your body's one interconnected system, and you can't really tease it all apart.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So how does that impact sex drive or libido? Do you see that in your clinic?
Well, yes. I mean, there are many reasons for hormone related problems, including low libido. But my joke is the largest sex organ for women is between their ears,
Very
and
true. I thought you were going to
so
say
I
the
mean,
clitoris, but I'm like, that too.
no,
I thought you were about to start
it's
talking about
this.
foreplay. I was like, yes, Mark Hyman, foreplay.
No, this.
The mind, the brain. He's pointing to
It's
his
your
head.
brain, it's your
Mm-hmm.
mind, and so. But there are real physiologic changes that happen. So
Mm-hmm.
often, as women get older, their testosterone levels go down, and that can be treated by various kinds of therapies. Actually, strength training really helps build testosterone.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Balancing your diet with the right fats, getting more saturated fats can help build testosterone. And sometimes using testosterone as a therapy for women. I have them do clitoral drops, which can be really helpful, local clitoral drops for testosterone. They can be really helpful
Huh.
for libido. And I know it works because I keep getting calls for refills. So,
I've never heard of that. That's fascinating.
yeah.
I want to come
Yeah.
back
Because
to the
then you don't
clitoral
feel like
drops.
you don't want to grow a beard, right?
No.
We
So
don't, you
it's
don't want to have so much
local.
testosterone. It's local. And then you can also do topical skin. So I sometimes use topical as well, low dose topical. I'll measure women's testosterone levels. But a lot of times it's stress. It's the sort of changes in hormones that happen with age and things that can be treated.
And so let's talk about butter for a second, because I know that you were saying dairy could be a tricky one for women.
Mm.
And also, though, that fat is really important for hormones. What's your perspective on butter?
Well, it's gotten a bad rap,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately. I remember traveling to China, and I was in the Northwest where they had the I think they were the Cossacks or I don't know, whatever, they were Mongolians, whatever. They were living in these yurts, and they had butter churners out in the front. They
Mm,
made butter from the yaks, and
yes.
so butter's been around for a while.
Yep.
And saturated fat has gotten a very bad rap. And when you look at large data sets, and this is really an important framework here, in the absence of starch and sugar, saturated fats really don't cause harm. If you're
Oh.
having a bagel and butter, it's bad. If you're having butter on your broccoli or your steak, that's fine, right?
Oh.
So it's the combination of carbohydrate with saturated fat that causes the problem.
That is so
But saturated
delicious,
fats,
but naughty.
yeah. I mean, I personally noticed when I increased saturated fat levels in my diet, my testosterone went way up. And so,
Ah.
fats are really critical. And a lot of people on low fat diets have a lot of hormonal problems, which is why we see infertility and so forth. So I used to, live near this ashram where there was this whole kind of epidemic of loss of periods and kinds of hormonal issues with women because they were all vegetarian and they all were on no oils, no fats. And so it really kind of was a double whammy.
Huh.
So yeah.
Do you think that whole low fat movement, low fat, high sugar movement has thus been a big contributor to what we're seeing
Oh,
hormonally
completely.
on top of a whole bunch of other stuff?
Completely. I mean,
Yeah.
the whole, I mean, I wrote a book called Eat Fat, Get Thin, which is really a
Mm.
book about the story of fat and how we got into this incredibly messed up situation of teaching everybody that we should be eating low fat foods to lose weight, that if you eat fat, you're going to get fat. And if you eat fat, you're going to get a heart attack. Neither of those is true. And even the
Yes.
dietary guidelines have said cholesterol is not a nutrient concern. Total fat doesn't matter in terms of heart disease risk. I mean, saturated fat, they're still debating about because when a lot of the studies show that saturated fat is a problem, but it doesn't ferret out the fact that it's the carbohydrates and the saturated fat together.
I've never heard that. That is such key information, folks listening.
Oh, it's huge. Yeah.
You mentioned, how many books have you written so far? You're prolific.
I think 18.
18. Jesus Christ. Yeah. So let's talk about cognitive function, because clearly you are firing, my friend, on all cylinders. No. And I mean, just watching you work and pull in information and put it together. So it's like, how do we keep up with Mark Hyman cognitively? What are you doing?
Oh, wow.
Share the wealth.
I mean, it's just the basic stuff. It's sleep, it's exercise, it's eating whole foods, it's the right fats, it's taking your vitamins. One of my favorite cognitive boosters is hormetic therapies like cold and hot therapy, sauna and cold plunge. I was with our friend John at his house. I'm literally staying like next door to John and our friend, and I went over to his house, and he has basically a tub that looks like a trough you would feed cows water or something. He fills it up with ice. There's a little water in, and you get in. It's like, so I went in there, and all those really help to sort of your cognitive function. I think there are cognitive enhancing nutrients. I think the B vitamins are really important. Folate, B12, B6. I think fish oil, very important. Your brain is made of fish. And there's just, it's just also making sure you meditate, do all the basic things.
My final question is, before we move into rapid fire, are there any little trends? I mean, you mentioned a few. The hot and cold is very trendy at the moment. Fats has become trendy. So these are actual trends that we should be paying attention to. Are there any trends at the moment that you think we should be paying attention to? Like, for example, NAD is really popular. Ozone is really popular. Are there certain trends that you really feel are actually here to stay?
You mean in terms of optimizing your health or hormones?
I would say general health, but also hormones, if there's any that you think that's a real winner.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a sort of this. I'm working on this new book called Young Forever.
Oh my Lord, here he goes, number 19.
Yep, and I'm really thinking about how to sort of frame the things that both help our bodies repair and heal, but also to generate more health and vitality. And it's really, I sort of break it down to abundance mimetics, things that mimic abundance that help us build and grow and make new muscle and repair tissues, and then the adversity mimetics, things that stress us a little bit, and then activate these ancient healing responses to stress. A little bit of stress is good. Too much stress will kill you. So hormesis is basically what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So hot and cold plunges are an example. Time restricted eating is an example, where you don't eat for 16 hours and eat within an 8-hour window. That's a stress for your body. You're starving, but actually it turns on all these ancient survival genes that make you live longer, feel better, repair things, regulate hormones. A lot of the reasons our hormones are dysregulated, we just eat from the minute we wake up till we go to bed. And then sometimes we wake up in the middle of the night and have night eating, people do, which is terrible. And so guaranteed way to gain weight is eat before you go to bed and then wake up in the middle of the night and eat. You're going to just store it like the sumo wrestlers. And that's what the sumo wrestlers do. They basically eat and they go to sleep.
Right.
So you want to activate these adversity mimetics and these abundance mimetics. So adversity mimetics are time restricted eating, hot and cold therapies, hypoxia. So there are machines now that will actually help you go to Mount Everest by, just sitting in your living room and then bring you down. It makes your body go, oh, geez, I'm danger. Well, I've been saying, danger. And for those who don't know Will Robinson, that's Lost in Space. Anyway, I'm dating myself as a kid when that show came out. and
your wisdom's appreciated.
There's all these really cool things. Exercise, so interval training, strength training. These are adversity mimetics, and they help make you stronger and build resilience and help repair tissues. And then of course there's all the abundance mimetics, which are more rare in nature, but there's things we're learning about, like the orgasm. Yes, orgasm. Yes, absolutely. And then there's also plant compounds that act as abundance mimetics, like resveratrol and quercetin and various polyphenols. So upgrading all the diet to include really colorful plant compounds. And then there's ones like NAD, which people are using, which stimulates sirtuins, which is a longevity switch in the body. So that activates longevity and corrects insulin resistance and helps repair DNA and has all these other beneficial effects. So I try to look at how do we create this balance between this sort of build up and breakdown. It's basically it's basically breaking down your body and then building it back up and breaking down and building up. And so that's just what you do. I mean, think about, if you have a house, you kind of have to sometimes clean it up. You can't just cook in the kitchen for forever and never clean it. It's going to be a disaster. So there's a cleanup process that happens in the body when you stop and do these adversity mimetics. And then there's the buildup, which is when you're making a nice dinner and building new muscle and tissue and so forth. So that's what's sort of exciting to me to think about.
When's the book out?
February 2023.
Very exciting.
Along with a documentary and a PBS show and
oh Lord. See that cognitive function, everyone listening, if you too want to get to a space where you can write 19 books and counting, then eat more vegetables and reduce your toxins.
I might take a break. I may be done for a while.
I mean, it's incredible. Like I said, you're prolific and the world is so grateful for the contribution you've made. I said last question, but I have one more question because you were talking about polyphenols and I actually figured that when I stopped drinking coffee, although this is very sad because I love coffee so much and I switched to matcha, I noticed my PMS basically went away. What is that?
So caffeine seems to, and particularly coffee, seems to be a problem. And so it does. I mean, pregnant women shouldn't drink coffee. Women are having a lot of hormonal issues, often having to get off caffeine, alcohol, sugar, and dairy. If you think about, take homes for this, if you're having hormonal stuff going on, sugar, dairy, and when I say sugar, I mean flour and sugar, because flour is just like sugar. It's actually worse than sugar. Dairy, caffeine, alcohol, they're going to screw up your hormones. And then add in lots of broccoli family. You want to add in flax seeds, soybeans. Those are really good hormonal regulators. Plus lots of fiber, good fats, avocados, nuts and seeds, fish oil, omega-3 fats, even some saturated fat from grass-fed butter. All of those will really help regulate hormones. And sometimes it's just easy as that. And then cut out all the toxins in your life. As much as possible. As much as possible. You can't get rid of them all.
Yeah, but it's profoundly changed my life. So for anyone listening, if you are struggling with painful periods, infertility, any hormonal issues, as Mark said, I cannot recommend enough to give this a go. Just follow the protocol. How long would you say they have to follow it for them to feel the effects?
Angel, it's kind of remarkable. We can screw up our bodies, and it can take decades to screw them up. But literally in days or weeks, people can snap right out of it. Wow. I mean, I'm sure you noticed maybe after the first cycle or so, you were good.
Yes, literally.
It's not like it doesn't take that long. So it's not like I'm saying, do this for 5 years and your periods might get better. I'm like, do it for 5 days and you'll see how you feel.
Yeah.
I think,
Amazing.
I actually ran into a friend of ours the other day who was 65 and Regina, and she was like,
we just had her on
kind of
the podcast.
I'm feeling kind of, getting older and my aches and pains and this isn't working and my digestion, I'm a little tired, all the energy and blah, blah, blah. She's like, can I come see you and get a workup? And I'm like, save your money, do the 10-day detox diet and call me in the morning, basically. And she saw me the other night and she started hitting me. And I'm so mad at you. And I'm like, what? She's like, You're right. It worked. And I'm feeling so good, but I'm not eating this and I want to eat my this and I want to eat my that. I'm like, I drink and I can have a drink and I have tequila. I'm like, whatever you want to do. Just know this is now how your body works. So I have no judgment. People can do whatever they want to do. Like I went out last night and had pasta at this really amazing Italian restaurant, which I rarely do, but I'm like, okay, fine. Yeah. And I'm not gluten sensitive, so it's fine, but I know I don't want to eat that very often. But I'm like, okay. So I had a glass of red wine and some really yummy pasta, and I'm feeling a little bit of the effects, but I'm like, okay, I'm willing to take being a little sluggish and being in a food coma just so I can enjoy it for the moment. Now, how often do I do that? Rarely, like maybe every 6 months or something. And 98% of the time I'm good. But it's like, you get to choose. But if you don't know that what you're doing is disrupting your biology, you're just a victim of the circumstance. But once you understand, you go, okay, I know if I eat this, I'm going to feel like this. If I eat dairy, I'm going to get a pimple. If I eat this, I'm going to feel bloated. If I eat this, I'm going to get a migraine. Then you choose. It's your life. You get to do what you want to do.
Yes.
But I just want to empower people with the information to say, look, now I know how my body works.
Yes.
Like if I want my car to go in forward, I have to put it in drive. If I want to go in reverse, I have to put it in reverse. We know how our cars work. Most of us know far less about how to run our bodies than how to run our cars.
And what I've started doing to that vein is just really being extra conscious the week or two before my cycle, before my bleed, knowing that that's really what's going to impact me the most. And I've also noticed, it's been 6 or 7 months. There's been 1 or 2 cycles where I wasn't as conscious, and I immediately felt the effects, PMS, the pains. And so it's like, the price to ride the ride. And so for me, like timing it in my cycle has been, if I'm going to eat a pizza, I'm going to, pay the piper, let's say, and have it for the moment and the enjoyment, which I still do. I just try to time it with my cycle, and I find that's been really helpful for me. All right. Are you ready for rapid fire questions?
Okay. All right.
Okay. All righty. So what is the most important thing from your perspective for successful relationships?
Radical honesty and cop-to-itiveness.
Yes. What does cop-to-itiveness mean?
It means you cop to it. You
cop to it. Okay. Yeah. Self-responsibility. Okay. I love that. Yes.
You're accountable for actually your part of whatever's going on.
Yes. What is your favorite thing that you own?
That I own? Well, not really much about material things. Aside from books, which I think are a big category, it's probably my Theragun.
Oh,
it's like a self-massage tool.
Yeah, I know what a Theragun is. They're amazing. Okay, so someone comes to you and they're feeling really down, and you can only give them one piece of advice. What do you say?
I would say, learn the skills that you need to be able to change your state. And there are multiple ways to change your state. So if you're in a shitty state, take an ice cold shower, go for a run, do yoga, make love, stand on your head, whatever, like take a hot bath, take a steam, take a sauna. Something that changes your physiological state will change your mental state. So I think that's a real hack that I've used when I'm feeling I'll do something, get a massage, whatever it is, get a foot rub. There are a million ways to change your state, but I think learning the skills and tools to be able to change your state at any time is really important.
Yes, I love that. If you could be any animal, what animal would you be?
I would be an animal. What animal would be? I'd be a wolf.
Yeah. If you could have a superpower, what superpower would you have?
Oh, gosh. I have so many superpowers already. So
yes, you do.
I think it would be teleportation, because I'd like to be in so many places with so many friends all the time, and just getting there is a hassle. So I think I could just go to beam me up, Scotty. I would go for that.
That's a really, really nice one. So second last question, if you had to choose a second profession, like you were existing in a parallel universe and you were not doing the career you're in now, what would you be doing? What would your profession be?
Easy. I would be a musician and just light people up with music and play and dance, and I would. Mark
Hyman, the rock star. Yes. I see that. A lot of people say that, like pretty much everyone says that. That's their choice. There's something in that. And this is the last one. If there was a universal answering machine that you could leave a message on today that everyone in the world would hear, what would you say?
That one I need to think about.
Take your time.
It would be live in integrity with your mind, body, heart, and soul, no matter what.
Yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Mark, for coming on, for your time. I appreciate you in my life, and I just appreciate your wisdom in the world. And I'm so grateful our listeners got to tap into that today. So where can they find you if our listeners want to connect with you?
Oh, everywhere. And
It's not that hard.
drhyman.com. You get my podcast on all the platforms, the Doctor's Farmacy with an F. My Instagram, social media handles is Dr. Mark Hyman. So Dr. Mark Hyman. And then you should be able to find me.
Join the movement. Thank you so much, brother.
Of course. Thank you.
That's it for today, Awakened One. And just a quick thank you from me. Thank you for gifting us with your most precious resource, your time and attention, so that we can make this world a more awakened place. And if we're not friends on Instagram yet, then we absolutely should be. So come on over and say hello at Angelika Alana, and I'll see you there and see you next week.